unbearable for you, but I couldn't stop it. But that's the thing we want to help everybody understand, is that everybody here has a role in that, a really important role. And so with that, I'm happy to stand for questions. I'm happy to do my best to talk through what went on today and what the vision for the future is. More than anything, I just want to hear from you about what you saw, what you heard, what you're excited about, what you're nervous about. Let's hear it.
Yeah, Luke. Question, Josh. I was really curious to hear how you believe the public comment.
Please comment.
Okay, so Luke's question was how do big? Aren't there other places doing it? And the more we talk about it, the more we develop it, I think the more it starts to make sense to people. We actually had a discussion today with people who are looking to do the same type of concept in Wyoming in a completely different space. The idea that there's some core set of technology or technologists, and then people working to solve a problem, and then businesses that spin off of it, that's not an outrageous concept. And so what we're hearing right at first is it was like, that seems like a lot of money. But then as we continue to like talk about it, people get pretty excited about it because it's, you know, thousands of jobs, and it's kicking off hopefully tens and hundreds of businesses that will make Wyoming, you know, a place where, again, we don't have to have 70% of the UW graduates leaving the state. We can have them here, folks like you. So yeah, great question. Thank you. How about a question from anywhere else?
Josh, can you hear us? We have a question from Casper.
Hi, Josh. Sabrina Kemper with Natrona County. You were asked an important question. I thought that we didn't have a lot of government, you know, for the first 150 years of our existence. And I'm sure you've had time to think about it since this was earlier today. What's your thoughts on less government? You hear that less government all the time. Are we standing in our own way? If we didn't do what we do, would the public sector take over? You know, would they do what we're doing? Because there would be a need that the government's not stepping in.
Sabrina, that's a really good question. I think it's a question that we think about a lot. What I will tell you is that I think that government needs to be the right size. I think smaller in some places probably needs to be, the government probably needs to be smaller. But in other places, it probably needs to be bigger. And I think it depends on the problem you're trying to solve. I think sometimes people confuse national issues with state issues and local issues. And I think that confusion is difficult because we don't, as much as we'd like to say we do, we don't actually live on the national stage, we live on the local stage. And so I think that there are ways to balance that just right. I think in a place like Wyoming, where we are incredibly rural, unfortunately, there are places that are facilitating business better than we are. As much as we would like to not say that, it is true. People are finding ways to have their businesses successful in other states, and they're not finding it here as easily. And so what that means is the private sector has had a shot at doing that, and that it continues to have a shot at doing it, but it's not happening. And so we can't sort of hope and dream on a concept. We have to look at what's really going on. And what's really going on is that the private sector is doing their best, but they can't fill that gap in Wyoming. And so as a result, that is the role of government, is to fill that gap if we want to compete. If we don't want to compete and we want to go backwards, we can do that. That is possible. That's not the way I see the future. And so, Sabrina, I think your question is a really good one for all of us to wrestle with. We always say small government, but what we really mean is the right amount. And sometimes the right amount is a little bit bigger than we expected. So I think we just have to open our mind to a little bit different paradigm.
Josh, do you think that one of the problems of the committee is they don't understand the infrastructure problem that we have? And basically the private sector doesn't have to put in the infrastructure because they can go to other states. And I think when listening to them today almost made me think of them as Neanderthals, because they're thinking that somebody's gonna bring in this infrastructure and pay for this infrastructure and make it happen. And I think that's what we need to do, is provide the infrastructure so they have the opportunity to come in at the same cost here as they do in New York.
Bruce Pivot, who happens to be on my board of directors, so Bruce, I hope I'm doing a good job. Want to keep it?
Well,
We'll talk about that later.
you know, the jury's still out on that, Josh.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Got a moment to fix that. Your question is there a realization that the infrastructure in Wyoming, that people understand how big the infrastructure challenge is in Wyoming? And are we able to communicate how big that problem is and communicate that that problem doesn't exist in other places?
Right.
Right? And I think that we have that challenge, because right now our communities have a hard time growing on their own. They have a hard time paying for infrastructure with the revenue model that we have. And that's a challenge. Whether we like it or not, it's a challenge for us. It's not a challenge in other places. That's why development can happen in other places much more easily than it can happen here. Because it turns out that those communities can invest in infrastructure because they will get paid back in tax revenue. That's how it works. So the incentives are aligned in other places. They're not here. And so what we have is we have essentially a fiscal policy that creates stagnation for our communities. It's a big challenge. The second part of your statement is, how do we help people understand that and square that fact and reality with their view of the future? And I think that that's exactly what we're trying to do. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that with the legislature. We'll be able to keep that dialogue going. All right, anybody online that wants to ask a question?
Josh, I have another one from Casper.
Sure.
Hi, Josh. This is Brad Cundy. First off, you did a great job. You've got a lot of patience, and you need when you're sitting there in front of that thing. One of the things that I think wasn't talked about or brought up was, the lack of healthcare workers that we have, and the two go hand in hand with the manufacturing jobs and the outflow of our students. And everybody on that panel there, I'm guessing we're at least 50 years old or older. I'm 66. And, that's the most important thing that's facing the age problem in our state, is we're not going to have the caretakers to take care of us. And the two go hand in hand. You got to create the growth to keep the people here, and you got to be able to figure out how you're going to get more nurses and doctors and such. But anyway, I thought you did a great job, and I'll let go with that.
Well, thank you, sir. The patience comes from having 4 kids. I think some of them are cruising around here actually today. So, but you're right. This is a complex problem. We're not facing a problem where there is one answer and it's going to solve everything. That's just all there is to it. But that outflow of young people or people in their, say, 20s to 40s is a challenge, because if we can't create the jobs here or have the people to have the jobs here, then our aging population, which is growing, the demographic band for 65 and above is growing. It's the only demographic band that is growing. Well, I don't know about all of you, but once I hit 50, stuff started to hurt. And I have a feeling it's only going to accelerate. So, I think you're right. I think it's a big challenge, and I think we've got to address it now. That's the fun part about this, is that we have the means and we have an understanding of the problem that we haven't ever had before. I think, at least at this level. And so right now is the time. We've got to start making some investments for the future. So thanks for your comments, and thanks for being a part of this, because I think it's going to take a lot of those voices to do it.
I think we've got a question from Riverton.
Yeah. Oh, Mayor, please. Yes, sir, we are unable to hear Riverton right now. Okay. I'll tell you what, Riverton, while you're working on your audio, we're gonna go to Gillette and then we'll come right back to you.
Josh, can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Hi, Josh. It's PJ Burns. Good to see you. Great job today. Just thinking about one of the questions and actually your last comment about how other states reap the rewards of their investments in infrastructure that may help a business to or a business park, et cetera. It makes me really concerned about about them not having any more property tax in our state. I mean, it feels to me like we are just shooting ourselves in the foot over and over again through taxation or lack thereof. So I don't know if there's an answer to that. I don't know if I'm asking you a question at all. It was just a thought that I had from that last comment regarding the tax structure and investment from other states.
Well, PJ, thanks for joining. First of all, thank you, and thanks for the work you do up north there. And here's what's interesting about this. You may not have had a question, but I see a soapbox, and maybe I'm gonna get on it. I don't know. But that's exactly the challenge that I think we all have, is that we have a fiscal system that we think is fixed. We think that this is the fiscal system that we have, and there is no changing it. And I disagree strongly. It turns out that fiscal system was put in place to solve a particular problem at a certain time with the resources that we have. And it has worked swimmingly. We have a lot of wealth because of it. However, moving forward, we're going to have to take a hard look at that fiscal system and ask ourselves, is it solving the problem that we have today and in the future? And right now, based on what we see, it's actually not. It's not positioned to solve the problem that we have today and in the future. And so what I would suggest is that we continue to work on that. It's not going to change overnight. I think there are local tools that can still be utilized and should be utilized fully. But we've ultimately got to figure out how to adjust our fiscal system to solve the problems that we have, not the problems that we had.
Sounds like Riverton has their microphone fixed.
Right, Riverton says it ready.
Josh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir.
Good. This is Mayor Highsmith, Shoshone. Just wanted to make a comment or two, and then a question maybe. But I thought you did a really good job stating the position of the Wyoming Business Council and the good things that you're doing. Yeah, I would like to Shoshone, we're approximately 600 people each. We're a mid-sized municipality in the state of Wyoming, about mid-size. So we're a bunch of what people call smaller little communities. And we do not have the funding. We couldn't tax our residents enough for the infrastructure. Just the business ready grant that we got to help extend our sewer line, we could have never done that without the help of the business council. And that's very important part of working on helping us expand. So thanks a lot for that. And then, we need the community, smaller community. We just don't have the population to work on the infrastructure. And, we're competing against the other states around the country are providing that. And as you stated, they can go somewhere else and don't have to pay for that. And, that's where they're going to go. So we need to be in the game. We need to be in the game. So we need to compete with others, whether philosophically we like that or not. One of the previous speakers touched base a little on healthcare, and I feel that's a big part of attracting people, businesses to the state of Wyoming. Is the business council putting much emphasis on that as part of the big picture?
Well, thank you, Mayor, for that question, and thanks for the, yes, we have supported Shoshone with some of their expansions of infrastructure. but you've also supported us by being very active in all the other programs that we have as well. And I think it goes to show you it's really about the will of a community, not necessarily the money that you have if you want to get some stuff done. And I really appreciate your work there. As far as necessarily recruiting healthcare and looking at that, we haven't necessarily focused on that. And a lot of that is because we've been focusing on those primary employers that will hopefully, in a secondary effect, attract that larger healthcare workforce. And I think that's the challenge that we have, is that we've got to focus on those primary employers. And then we've got to hopefully, again, make it so that our communities are a place where healthcare can exist and where healthcare work is available to serve those primary supply or primary businesses. And it's a tough thing, because we'd like to go out and recruit a hospital to come in or whatever into certain places, but if there's not the population there to support it, that's a real challenge. And that sparse population challenge is one that we cannot overstate, is a very, very big challenge for the state. It is absolutely something that we're going to have to do things much differently than other states because of that sparse population. It's just all there is to it. So thanks for the question, and thanks for being part of the work up there in Shoshone. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, you know very well, because you've supported efforts to understand the housing problem. And you're not going to have population if you don't have affordable housing and available housing. So all of these things, the fishbone explains it. I don't think they understand the complexity. Excuse me, but
Ginny's here in Laramie, and she's mentioning that housing is a challenge, and that there are a lot of challenges that a community faces around growth. Housing is definitely one of them. And I think the other part of it is that we are trying to educate and work closely with the legislature on some of these challenges. I just want to say, though, a few years ago, I stood in front of the Joint Corporations Committee and said that housing is not my problem. My job is to make the housing problem worse. I actually said that. And I know, like, Jenny, that's the response that you should get. And the reason I said that is because, you know, I was looking at a very small segment of our problem. And that was, how do we bring employers here so that it puts pressure on the system in order for more housing? So if you create more demand, supposedly supply should match it. The challenge is that we know now that supply and demand, especially in housing, is inelastic, right? So more demand doesn't actually create more supply. And so what we quickly shifted, and now that we understand the problem, and I chewed on those words for a while, which they've been super tasty, and I'll get to do it again, trust me. Promise you, there's something I'm saying today, and later I'll be like, I was wrong. That's just part of the deal. And so as we understood that problem more, what we realized is that there's a regulatory and an infrastructure challenge in Wyoming. The housing regulations are just not suited, and we don't have the infrastructure in place or the ability to pay for infrastructure in order to facilitate it. So you're absolutely right. We're sitting here trying to fight with these states around us, and we got, you know, two hands behind our back. So you're right. It's a complex problem. We're working closely with the legislature to be able to illuminate that. And hopefully what we'll be able to do is help people realize that ideology is a beautiful thing. But when it comes down to what happens on the ground and the practicality, we're going to have to deal with practicality. Okay. Especially when things are not working that well, we're going to have to open our minds a little bit. So thanks for that. And believe me, I've had to change my tune quite a few times. There's another one. Cheyenne, it's like you're on.
Hey Josh, this is Tucker Fagan. How you doing?
That is the Tucker Fagan, everybody. The gold standard of all people in my position.
You make me proud. You did a great job today, because you're a director who understands the budget, understands your mission, and you're doing it. All right. I was told in my time at the Business Council by two other state directors, I will never put an exception budget item, because I don't want to have to work for the governor, and I don't have to go to joint appropriations. Right? You're taking the heat. You're on the field. I admire that. So good on you. One of the things I learned in the Business Council is If you do nothing, you increase your probabilities of getting nothing. So out there doing things is the right thing, and you're doing those, Josh, and along with your staff. So thank you. Thanks for doing that. My second year here, Equality States Policy Center hired Stephanie Kessler to come down. She told me, my job is to kill you. All right. I sat down with her and I said, let's take my Bible, which is the statute, and we will go through every single sentence, and I will show you what we're doing because that sentence is in that statute. She eventually came back to me and said, I showed that to the Equality States, and I told them there will always be a Department of Commerce. It's called the Business Council, but there'll always be an entity like that in the state of Wyoming. So what do you guys are going to supplant it with? And she said they had no damn idea. And that's what a lot of people, and some of the people on joint appropriations, I got that same sense too. They don't understand what the statute is, and they don't understand how you are doing exactly what you are being told to do. One suggestion I have is, obviously, many on JAC do not understand that, and I don't know what the percentage is now, but in my time, we spent 2% of the budget on recruitment. 98% of the budget was on helping existing companies in Wyoming. SBDC, Manufacturing Works, Research Product Center, Market Research Center. That's helping existing Wyoming companies because we want them to grow. Their families have dedicated themselves to Wyoming and they want to stay. And that's what the role of government is. Help what we have. Again, that question about Radiant and 25 million. You don't understand 16.6 of the Constitution. We cannot give $1 to an individual or a business. It doesn't work that way. What we do is provide the infrastructure. I'm happy to say I pushed BRC through the legislature because I recognize that. And I said to the legislature at the time, we have a lot of companies coming here saying no income tax, no corporate tax, low unemployment insurance rates. You guys are heaven. And we'd have to say to them, you've looked at that place in Laramie or in Casper or wherever. They'd say, I want product out the door in 6 months. I'd have to say, you give me 18 and I get a road out to that cow pasture. We're nowhere. We have got to build infrastructure. Without infrastructure, we can't compete. We're dead. So I hope people in the legislature will understand that component. We're not giving money to the business. We're building the infrastructure, which I remember in Coral, Wyoming, Pinedale, sorry, that we built a sewer line out to their business park. And they came and said, hey, can we build a housing area halfway between? We went, yes, you grow that community. And if we can help you in other ways, we will. Okay.
Hey, Tucker, are you looking for a job?
Hey,
Bruce is over here writing down
laboratory.
notes. I think he wants your phone number. Yeah.
Laboratory. Josh, that's the kind of thinking we need. I was fortunate in two of my years in the Air Force, I was sent to Boston, Massachusetts to work at MITRE Corporation, MIT Research and Engineering. That is, the Air Force uses that. Navy uses Johns Hopkins. This is where they go and try and offload to smart people to get ideas of how we can grow what we're doing and be out on the forefront of technology. You know, great on you for doing that. I feel bad the governor X'd that out and the legislature seems like they're walking away. That's the kind of thinking we need in Wyoming to, provide for the future, provide for our kids and our grandkids. I got 2 kids coming out of UW, grandkids, out of UW this summer. I want them to get jobs here, just like all of us. Okay, Josh, I hate the talking. It's doing, and you're a doer, so good on you, and keep doing that. and keep going up against the legislature. One other point is, I think I got to it, but when I would go out to talk to legislators, I'd show them that the 98% of the budget was to help businesses in their communities. Only 2% I used on recruitment. And they finally got, oh, okay, you're really helping people who vote for me. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Hey, Josh, you did me proud. Thank you.
Means a lot, Tucker. Thank you.
I think Gillette.
Gillette does.
Hey Josh, this is Gillette. We have another question.
Right on.
Hey Josh, Janelle Oberlander from Gillette College. Thanks so much for the opportunity. So to Tucker's point, what's your call to action? We have heard some phenomenal testimony today. We've heard some phenomenal comments. What's your call to action?
Well, thanks, President, for the work you're doing up at the college there, and thanks for joining today. The call to action is simple. Call to action is, people, you need to reach out to a few friends. You need to get them involved in this exact same discussion. And then you need to sit down and have coffee with your legislators. That's all there is to it. Because people need to understand how it really works on the ground. And our legislators, I'm going to tell you right now, they're overworked. There is a ton of information flying at them. It turns out that's a volunteer job in Wyoming. So we need to have a little grace for the work that they're doing. That's a hard thing to do, to put yourself up for election. It's a hard thing to do that work. It's a hard thing to absorb all of that information. And what they need to do is hear from people who are on the ground, who want to talk with them about the future of Wyoming. So the call to action is go have coffee, grab a few friends, take them along, and start the conversation. The other thing is that 27% of people voting in the primary is unacceptable. We are taking an incredible responsibility for granted. And it's a privilege to get to do it. If we don't use it, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think that's the call to action, President Oberlander, is like, let's go to work. Let's start talking to people about what's going on. Let's start painting a vision for the future and helping our legislators understand that they have support to do these kinds of things. That there are people out there that want a bright future for Wyoming. If they don't ever hear it, they're not going to be able to vote on it. They're not going to be able to put legislation forward that helps it. I think that's a really big thing for us to do. Beautiful thing about Wyoming is, I guarantee you either know a legislator or you know somebody who knows a legislator. There aren't that many degrees of separation in this state. In fact, it makes that whole 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon look like child's play. It's probably 1 degree of separation. So let's go to work. And the next thing I would say is always think about who else should you bring to things like this. You know people that should come. Bring them along. Make sure that they're involved in the conversation. Thanks for the question. Thanks, Janelle.
Josh, another question from Casper.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
Hi, Josh. My name is Verba Eccles, just a community member, retired from the school district here, and currently serve on the Wyoming Women's Foundation and whatever nonprofit I can get involved. Foremost, I'm going to echo what's been said earlier. Thank you for your comments. You certainly held a grace under fire, and I'm trying to go now with your words and give grace to several of those legislators that I'm not confident they're deserving of such. But my question is very similar to what the president just said, and that is not only the call to action, but how do groups of people like myself, just a mere citizen, how do we begin understanding the talking points? And I truly appreciate your focus. You are the business council. You are to do a very specific and serve a specific role in the community. How do we partner and collaborate? I too am an aunt of 2 nephews about to graduate. One that it's already left, a niece that's left the state, has no desire to come back. She's not having any luck finding a job where she is, but she doesn't want to live in a state that doesn't seem to have anything else to do. We talk about our hiking and our fishing and our hunting and the beautiful outdoors, but we don't have a lot of infrastructure to continue supporting that for our youth to attract them back. So my question is, what are the other spokes to this wheel? You can't do it all, but what are the other entities? And how do we engage and understand those entities when we talk to our legislators?
Yeah, well, thank you, and we're all just mere citizens. I hope you know that you're not alone in that. That's what we are first. And I think the best thing you can do is get involved in the smallest possible way to start with. Whether that be an organization in your community, whether that be at the community level in government, or whether that be just a group of friends. But if you're already involved with you mentioned the Wyoming Women's Foundation, is that correct? Then I think that's a good start of utilizing that network. But then we have regional directors all over the state. Small Business Development Center has regional people out there in the communities. I think the biggest thing is to get plugged into other organizations and just to sit down and understand what their mission and goals are, and then begin to build from there. I strongly believe that while the state has a role and we probably have the biggest checkbook, I think the things locally are way more important. I think that the more you can get involved at a local level and understand that, the better you're going to be able to serve the state. Because ultimately, the state decisions should support what's going on at the local level. So I think starting small, there's no such thing as too small. And so, even if it's just going to get to know another group and sort of shadow their meeting or something like that to understand what they're doing, I think that is a good start. And then, of course, more than anything, get involved at a local level and understand who the city council is, who the county commissioners are, how are things happening in your community, and what issues are existing there, because at that local level, you have the ability to move quickly and you have the ability to change policy probably better and faster than anywhere else. So I think that is something that we can all do. In terms of the business council, your regional director there, you know him now. If you didn't already before, Drew Dietrich is somebody who can definitely help you get connected. So thank you. Great question. One more.
Hey, Josh. Matt Fields here from Cheyenne, Wyoming. Want to say thank you again for being in there and talking through the budget with them. A few things. I want to thank the Business Council because I've worked with the Business Council previously in Burns, Wyoming. We were able to expand our infrastructure as the town was growing, as kind of an output of the data centers and growth there. So we appreciate that. Also, I've worked with companies that we used the data center grants before, and so we appreciate that infrastructure. One of the things I want to stand up, I guess, a little bit with the legislators is you have a bunch of, like you mentioned, volunteers that are in there. But the state, the Business Council pointed out, the state is on a downward turn almost. We're flat. We're going down over time. And really, we have a burn rate of so many years before things just aren't going to grow that well. So these guys are looking at our budget and they're watching the money flow out. And a lot of them, I think, you're because we're not seeing a ton of growth and there's no set vision of how do we get there. You're looking at this as, hey, we're trying to keep the money from flowing out. You're basically running from a fear standpoint. And so when you're in a fear standpoint, you can't see the future and you can't see the next steps. And, the Business Council is doing great. You provide a very critical service so much to Wyoming, and I appreciate that. But understand that they can't oftentimes see that right now. And we have a lot happening this next year in the state. We have a governor's race. We've got University of Wyoming stuff happening. There's really a huge opportunity in our communities to say, hey, our future is ours to take hold of. And the previous person that spoke, I apologize, I don't have your name, but being involved and being active in your community is the only way that Wyoming is going to actually make a change. It's going to start with our communities. And our workforces are the critical aspect. If we take our kids and our existing workforce and we develop it and upskill it, that's going to be the most critical thing we can do for our community. It's not going to be throwing money at it. It's not going to be doing any of that, but improving the workforce, whether through teaching our kids STEM or anything else, that's the future. Because once we do that, that allows the Business Council and you start to see validity to infrastructure, you see validity to improving policies and doing everything else. So Wyoming has to stand together underneath one unified vision. And that's the only thing that's really going to draw us into the future. But that's all I had. So Josh, I thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. But give our legislators a bit of an understanding that they can't see a big vision right now. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for setting that up. I think that's a good place to sort of close this out. Is that there is a big difference between the way we are able to critically think when we are under stress and fear, and when we are thinking of the future and abundance. And it's not just an attitude or a mindset, it's the way our brain works. And so I think you're absolutely right, is we've got to start to think about the future. We've got to start to think that the future is bright and that we can create a bright future with the investments that we make. And I think it definitely starts with discussions like this. And it starts by helping other people who might be in those positions to make decisions and in positions of power to see the world in a different way. We are not fighting against the legislature. We are not fighting against anyone. We're fighting for Wyoming. And what we're trying to help people understand is that there is the potential for abundance in Wyoming. We work so much in scarcity. We think in so much in scarcity. We have to pack money away for that terrible time. What if we thought about making investments for a beautiful time? What if we said, we think that there's something better out there that we can achieve if we invest? And I think it's up to us to bring that point of view, because when you only hear the negative all the time, that's the way you're going to think. And I think it's really important for all of us who understand the economy is not in a great spot. We know the graphs, we know the families, we understand it, to actually not continue to say that it's in a terrible spot, let's save away. It's like that is not working. Instead, it's up to us to say, we understand the data, and that's why we want to present something that's better. We want to present a future that's brighter. We want to present something that takes our wealth and turns it into long-term wealth and long-term success, not saves it away and so that it's there and all of us are gone. That's not what we want. And I think it's up to us to bring that positive viewpoint, because as the gentleman said, they're hit all the time with negative commentary. It doesn't matter what decision they make, it's a negative thing. And so I think what we got to bring is a different point of view and show the potential and show that actually people do want to grow. Actually, people do want success in the future. Sitting around with a big savings account at the state, it doesn't make our communities any better, actually. And so I think we've got to help people see that. And so I'm just appreciative that people watch Joint Appropriations Committee. Just so you know, I would never in a million years think that people would watch that. So thank you for doing it. It's a critical part, and it's an important part of where we're headed as a state. And again, the fact that we're coming out and talking about how we're utilizing funds for the future, this is where it started. And again, you have friends, bring them along. You have friends, take them to vote. You have friends, take them to a city council meeting. You have friends, sit down and have coffee with the legislator. Sit down and have coffee with others that might be able to see a bright future like you do. And I think when we do that, we're going to shape the future of Wyoming. And that's the only way that we're going to shape it in a way that I think makes sense for all of us. And so, thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging. And thank you for asking, what do we do next? Because that's exactly what we got to do. It doesn't end today. We got to keep going. So thank you all for joining in. And I really appreciate your energy and your excitement and your potential for the future. Thank you. Jenny, I'm all ears.